Hi, I am Anna. I come from www.ntvforex.com. Risk appetite hits some potholes as China data disappoints analysis. http ntvforex.com news ID 359A74814 10:20 am notes observations hope for a quick global economic recovery faded more coronavirus restriction. China data sap confidence risk appetite sentiment slowing down Asia China July industrial production YY 4.8% v 5.1% E China July retail sales YY 1.1% v 0.1% E 7th straight decline China July surveyed jobless rate 5.7% v 5.7% E New Zealand July manufacturing PMI 58.8 v 56.2 prior. Second straight expansion coronavirus total global cases 20,840,381 1.4% DD total deaths 754.6 K 0.8% DD Europe UK placed France and Netherlands on a 14-day travel quarantine list after recent rise in COVID cases America's Mexico Central Bank Banxico cut overnight rate by 50 bps to 4.50% as expected Energy US said to have seized Iran fuel cargo for the first time. The 4 ships were covered by U.S. warrant for seizure. Vessels said to have been taken over without the use of military force. Note Iran said to have seized Liberian-flagged Greek-owned tanker Wheela on August 12. Iran claimed it was in retaliation for carrying cargoes to the U.S. NBSP speakers fixed income FX commodities Iratum equities indices STOXX 600 1.91% 365.40. FTSE 2.48% at 6,035.05, DAX 1.48% at 12,801.70, CAC 42.34% at 4,924.50, IBEX 35 2.52% at 7,068.00, FTSE MIB 2.13% at 19,826.50, SME 1.58% at 10,097.50, S&P 500 futures 0.51% market focal points key themes European indices open lower across the board and continued to fall as the session progressed resurgence in coronavirus cases saps risk appetite better performing sectors include materials and health care consumer discretionary and energy sectors among underperforming sectors UK resumes lockdown easing. Removes Spain but adds France and the Netherlands to travel restrictions Italian government says still missing details on Autostrade deal earnings expected in the upcoming U.S. session include Terraform Power and ACS NBSP Equities Consumer Discretionary Rovio Entertainment Rovio.fi 5% earnings, Flow Traders Flow.nl 3% earnings, EasyJet EasyJ.uk 8%, Air France KLMAF.fr 6% UK adds France to Quarantine list Energy PGS.no 5% rejects offer Industrials Hapag Lloyd HLAG.de 13% earnings, Varta VAR1.de 5% earnings NBSP speakers Germany Economic Ministry would see a strong rebound in Q3 GDP Czech Central Bank CNB AUG minutes not that the inflation spike was seen as temporary and saw no risk of inflation expectations falling. Current trend in exchange rate was viewed as anti-inflationary factor Poland's central bank Gatner could raise interest rates in early 2021 Indonesia President Jokowi 2021 budget to speed up economic recovery. Forecasted 2021 budget deficit at IDR 971.2 T budget deficit to GDP at 5.5% versus 6.3% seen this year. Set 2021 GDP growth target between 4.5–5.5% range and 2021 CPI target at 3.0%. New Zealand PM Ardern Auckland lockdown measures extended by an additional 12 days until August 26 could see more cases as part of cluster. Strategy remained on elimination of COVID. To review measures on Friday, August 21. No need to take Auckland into Level 4 at this time. Remainder of country remained at Level 2. Fitch affirmed Singapore sovereign rating at AAA. Outlook stable. China Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Jian noted that coronavirus pandemic and U.S. export restrictions had impacted U.S. imports. reiterated stance that had been fulfilling U.S. trade agreement and hoped U.S. would stop its discrimination of Chinese companies. Reminder: U.S.-China officials plan to hold video conference in order to assess trade deal progression on August 15. NBSP currencies fixed income risk appetite encountered some turbulence in the session as hope for a quick global economic recovery seemed to have faded. Dealers cited the addition of more coronavirus restrictions by some countries NZ and UK and disappointing Chinese data as factors. USD was trying to muster some safe haven flows but was little changed against the European pairs. EUR/USD steady and holding above the 1.18 level, with the 1.19 area still viewed as the key short-term resistance and the 1.20 handle as psychological resistance. GBP/USD managed to hold on to slight gains despite UK government placing France and Netherlands on a travel quarantine list after recent rise in COVID cases. Pair at 1.3075 by mid-session. USD/JPY saw the yen firmer on safe haven flows. Weaker Chinese data put some of the commodity currencies on the defensive, with AUD and NZD slightly softer. NBSP economic data: 5 Finland June GDP indicator YY 4.8 v 5.6% prior. 5 Finland July CPI 0.4% v 0.2% prior. YY 0.6% v 0.0% prior. DK Denmark Q2 GDP indicator QQ 7.4% v 1.9% prior. RO Romania Q2 advanced GDP QQ 12.3% v 11.5% EYY 10.5% v 10.5% ECH Swiss July producer AMP import prices 0.1% v 0.5% prior. YY 3.3% v 3.5% prior. In India July wholesale prices WPI YY 0.6% v 0.5% EFR France July final CPI 0.4% v 0.4% EYY 0.0% v 0.9% CPI X Tobacco Index 104.44 v 104.45 EFR France July final CPI EU harmonized 0.4% v 0.4% EYY% v 0.8% EU Hungary Q2 preliminary GDP QQ 14.5% v 10.7% EYY 13.6% v 10.1% ETR Turkey June current account balance $2.9 billion v $3.0 BTR Turkey June industrial production 17.6% v 4.7% EYY 0.1% v 5.5% ECN weekly Shanghai copper inventories SHFE 172.1 K v 172.5 K tons prior. NL Netherlands Q2 preliminary GDP QQ 8.5% v 9.2% EYY 9.3% v 10.1% ENL Netherlands June trade balance A 4.1 b v A 3.2 b prior. PL Poland Q2 preliminary GDP QQ 8.9% v 9.5% EYY 8.2% v 9.1% EPL Poland July final CPI 0.2% v 0.1% prelim YY 3.0% v 3.1% prelim RU Russian narrow money supply WE August 7 RUB 3.11 T v 13.00 T prior. TW Taiwan Q2 final GDP YY 0.6% v 0.7% prelim. PT Portugal Q2 preliminary GDP second reading QQ 13.9% v 14.1% YY 16.3% v 16.5% prelim. IT Italy June general government debt A 2.531 T v A 2.510 T prior record high. HK Hong Kong Q2 final GDP QQ 0.1% v 0.1% EYY 9.0% v 9.0% EU Eurozone Q2 preliminary GDP second reading QQ 12.1% v 12.1% EYY 15.0% v 15.0% EU Eurozone Q2 employment QQ 2.8% v 0.2% prior. YY 2.9% v 0.4% prior. EU Eurozone June trade balance seasonally adjective A 17.1 b v A 14.5 b trade balance NSA UNA OI A 21.2 b v A 9.4 b prior. Cyprus Q2 preliminary GDP QQ 11.6% v 1.3% prior. YY 11.9% v 0.9% 1% prior fixed income issuance none seen NBSP looking ahead UR Ukraine Q2 preliminary GDP QQ 9.5% EV 0.7% prior YY 10.5% EV 1.3% prior in India to sell combined INR 300B in 2022, 2030, 2033 and 2060 bonds 0530 ZA South Africa to sell combined ZAR 2.0B. In IL 2025, 2038 and 2046 bonds 0600 IE Ireland June trade balance no ESTVA 6.7B prior 0600 UK DMO to sell A 3.0B in 1 month, 3-month and 6-month bills A 0.5B. A 1.0B and A 1.5B respectively 0645 US daily LIBOR fixing 0700 IL Israel July CPI 0.1% EV 0.1% prior YY 0.7% EV 1.1% prior 0700 BR Brazil AUG FGV inflation IGP 10 2.1% EV 1.9% prior 0730 TR Turkey Central Bank TCMB survey of expectations next 12-month no estate V 9.3% prior 0730 in India weekly forex reserve WE August 7 no. ESTV $534.6 billion prior 0800 BR Brazil June Economic Activity Index monthly GDP 4.3% EV 1.3% prior YY 7.5% EV 14.2% prior 0800 is Iceland July unemployment rate no ESTV 7.5% prior revised from 9.5% 0800 UK Daily Baltic Dry Bulk Index 0800 in India announces upcoming bill issuance held on WED 0800 ES Spain Debt Agency Tesoro upcoming announcement on bond issuance 0830 US July advance retail sales 2.1% EV 7.5% prior retail sales ex auto 1.3% EV 7.3% prior retail sales ex auto gas 1.0% EV 6.7% prior retail sales control group 0.9% EV 5.6% prior 0830 US Q2 preliminary non-farm productivity 1.5% EV 0.9% prior unit labor costs 7.2% EV 5.1% prior 0830 CA Canada June manufacturing sales 16.4% EV 10.7% prior 0900 CA Canada July existing home sales 20.0% EV 63.0% prior 0915 US July industrial production 3.0% EV 5.4% prior capacity utilization 70.3% EV 68.6% prior manufacturing production 3.0% EV 7.2% prior 10.00 US AUG preliminary University of Michigan confidence 72.0 EV 72.5 prior 10.00 US June business inventories 1.1% EV 2.3% prior 11.00 EU potential sovereign ratings after European close 12.00 CO Colombia Q2 GDP QQ 15.2% EV 2.4% prior YY 15.1% EV 1.1% prior 13.00 US weekly Baker Hughes rig count 15.00 CO Colombia June Economic Activity Index monthly GDP YY 11.9% EV 16.7% prior weekend IL Israel Q2 advanced GDP YY 25.2% EV 6.9% prior. Subscribe our channel to receive the news as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. If you want to read real-time news, text messages to MT5 Expert Advisors page at https://m.me mt5.expert.advisors.